Wake that ass up.
In the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got some special guests in the building.
Yes, indeed.
Stretch and Bobbito.
What up?
Wow.
This is weird. I can't see you.
I'm gonna slide up to the left a little bit in a second. Now, when you
Stretch and Bobbito.
when you
Super
walked in Stretch
legendary.
Armstrong, you said that you didn't meet Charlamagne before. You had an opportunity to meet him before, and you was approaching him,
And he
trying to
curved you.
give him an arm of "What's up, my brother?" and he kind of just turned on you.
It's always it's context to everything. You want to give him the context, Stretch?
Yeah, it was a Sanders rally at the Apollo along with Harry Belafonte
And Nina Turner
That's
and
right,
the
Nina.
late great Erica Garner.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. And and it was the end of the event. And yeah, I wanted to meet Charlamagne, so I walked up, and I'm tall, so I could reach up to the stage and I put my hand out, and just as I was expecting like the hip hop connection,
Hip-hop connection, my brother.
he did a plie and spun around and went the opposite
I
direction.
probably didn't see him.
And-
It was mad people.
But it's
there.
incredible. But
7 foot tall. What you mean you didn't see him?
But
You know how packed
Envy,
that place was?
there's something really kind of vulnerable and odd about like being super tall and standing at the front of the stage of the Apollo with your hand out
Right.
and getting faded.
Like, lift me up.
And I'm sure they was like, let's go, everybody move. I'm sure it was that type of situation.
But let's get
It's all
into some
good.
Stretch and Bobbito history, just so people who know who you are, because I'm from New York. So, of course, to me, Stretch and Bobbito are legendary.
Thank you.
And you guys had a radio show on 89.9 back in the day that was at Columbia University. And you guys broke a lot of records. And Envy and I were talking about it before you walked into the room, about how back then they didn't play hip-hop on the radio like all day. You couldn't just listen to like a radio station and it was just hip-hop. You had to really go to like this nighttime stay up late show to be able to hear just anything that was hip-hop.
No doubt.
So how did y'all get started? How did y'all meet each other? How did y'all link up? How did Bobbito and Stretch become a duo?
Ha Well,
LinkedIn.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
Stretch was in the radio first, though, right?
No.
You wasn't?
No.
Okay.
We got on the radio at the exact same time.
Okay.
Yeah. I worked at Def Jam in 1989 until 93. And so, this young fellow had came into the office looking for promos.
No, I wasn't looking. I was invited. I wasn't like knocking on doors like, let me get records.
You curved him like I did?
There's a trend here. It goes all the way back to 1989.
Back then, I mean, Def Jam was a curious business. We were like 15 deep for the whole, company. We was like the highest grossing African-American owned record label in the world. But, we didn't have no security. If Simone, the receptionist, was out at lunch, like there was nobody at the door.
And she was out of lunch the
Yeah.
day that I went there. I literally
Wow.
walked in. I was like,
Perfect
"This is Def
timing.
Jam. There's nobody here." I'm walking around like I could have gone to some offices and got some really dope cassettes.
And this is 160
And that's-
Barrack Def Jam.
No,
No.
this is
Before that.
652 Broadway.
Oh,
It is
that's
89, so this is
before.
like
Yeah.
Beastie Boys, LL, Run DMC, and that's probably it, right?
Well, Run DMC was on Profile, but
Okay.
yeah, it's Slick Rick.
Oh, Slick Rick was there, okay.
We had just released Third Base.
Terminator X
Yeah,
records.
Public Enemy was our
Public
biggest.
Enemy.
Was our biggest. PE and LL. Yeah, actually, 89 was a bad year for LL, but that's another story. That's when he came out with "I'm That Type of Guy."
I'm that.
So what happened? You
I
said
didn't mind
he
that
came to the
song.
Def. He came to Def Jam.
So on the way to the office, I bumped into a friend of mine, this English girl, and she was a girl back then.
Yeah,
young.
all right.
Yeah. Thanks. Bob's trying to keep me PC.
We went to Wesleyan. We know
Yeah,
what time it
we're
is.
very
about-
politically
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
It's PCU.
We try.
And I think if she heard this airing, she'd probably be flattered that I was calling her a girl at this point.
Got you.
And she's like, "Where you going?" I was like, "I'm going to Def Jam." She's like, "Oh, there's an employee there that I have the biggest crush on. His name's Robert Garcia." I was like, "All right."
Wait, I thought
That's
you
me.
said that.
No,
The girl said
Oh,
that.
okay.
she said that. Yeah.
So I walked down there and so that was good. I had a name, like, just in case I needed to drop one. And I'm walking through the halls like there's nobody here. And I stick my head into this conference room and I see this Latino brothers putting records into envelopes, like mailers. And I was like, "Yo,
That's how we did it back.
is
in
there a
the day.
Robert Garcia here?" He's like, "That's me." And then literally, like, we ended up walking outside. He knew who I was because he knew me from DJing at Mars, which was like the popping nightclub.
Yeah, Clark Kent was on the first floor. Duke of Denmark was on the second floor, and this cat was on in the basement. I was blown away. I walked in, he was playing G-Rap, Road to the Riches, and I was like, yo, okay, you a cool dude to play this. It was like, top of the night. So yeah, we have respect for him from jump.
We walked around and we went to Ben and Jerry's where my girlfriend was scooping ice cream. But she was, I was like 19, she was like 16 and fine. And,
yeah, she was.
And Bob was like, all right, I got to hang out with this dude.
So what happened to the girl that was coming to meet you?
Nah, I don't think.
That's legal in New York,
I was
by
thinking
the
about
way.
that.
I don't want to find out.
She was 16, I was 19. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Statute of limitations.
No, that's legal in New York.
It is?
Yeah,
You've
16.
investigated
No, it's
this?
not.
Yeah, so what? 'Cause Seinfeld was dating like a 16-year-old girl. Yes, he was.
Let me Google this.
Google it.
No, 16 is illegal.
Let's see if this
17
is
is
In
legal.
New York.
This might be it for you,
Stretch.
Stretch.
17, yeah.
Let me see.
I don't know.
Let's see here.
Charlamagne
In
sounds like he's
1989?
Hold on.
911, what's your emergency?
done the knowledge.
Goodness gracious.
Legal age
It is 17.
of consent
It's
in
17.
NYC.
It's 17.
It is 17.
This was not the
It
debate
was
I was
17.
expecting.
Sorry. Hey, sorry, Stretch. I tried to.
You don't usually reveal the age.
She may have been
Oh, it has to
17.
be. It has to be less than a 5-year age difference.
Oh, we're good.
Yeah, that's what
We're
I thought
good.
it was.
So,
Because
you're
Seinfeld was
fine.
dating some young ass girl.
So anyway,
Oh, actually, no. It says it's not true. So
All right, so again.
It's not
a
true.
friendship ensued.
So it is
That's
illegal.
what I first got it. All right.
And
You get high
like
over there,
literally
huh?
like 3 years.
I'm like, dang, yo.
We never talked about that.
He's like, I knew I should have took the lead
A
on this.
A friendship ensued, and 4 months later, Stretch got an offer to be on KCR, WKCR 89.9 FM, and he invited me to join him, and and that from there, we in the next 8 years we wound up inviting a lot of unsigned teenagers, including Nas, Biggie, Wu-Tang, Mobb Deep when they were Political Prophets, Big Pun when he was Big Dog the Punisher, Killer Cam who became Cameron, Murder Mace who became Mace, Eminem, you might have heard of him, Big L, when he was unsigned. I mean, on and on and on. And then, cats that was signed like Fuji, Cypress.
DMX in 90.
That's right, DMX the Great when he was DMX the Great. Unsigned, these are like kids. So whether they were signed and getting no love or completely unsigned and teenagers with no contract, we gave them a platform to be heard.
And they could freestyle, and those freestyles were legendary.
Yep, and the Big L Jay-Z freestyle, probably the most known of the 8 years that we were together. But we did a film titled Stretch and Bobbito, Radio That Changed Lives. We co-produced it, I directed it. It was on Netflix for a good 3 years.
Right.
And the history, the deep history of our show, its effect on not only the artist but on hip hop culture as well as our audience and as well as us. There's like 4 narratives in the film. Highly recommended. It's on Vimeo, iTunes, all that.
Amazon Prime.
Amazon, yeah, whatever. Hulu, Voodoo, whatever. Yeah.
So when you name these names, like like where were they at in their careers? Like were not even on at all, or just first singles?
Nas came up in February 14th of 1991, and he was unsigned.
Wow.
He was only known for Live at the Barbecue. But we revered him as if he was Rakim with 15 hours. We didn't care if you had released the record or not. The measure was, are you nice?
The first time I heard Protect Your Neck might have been on.
We were if you watch the of Mike's and Men documentary, it's documented. We were the first people to ever play Wu-Tang, period. In fact, 2 years before Protect Your Neck came out, RZA, when he was Prince Rakeem, brought up a cat named Ason Unique, who later became Dirty Bastard. Yeah, so
he would call up just.
Yeah, he was a regular
week
listener.
To week, just call up and we'd put him on the air like between 4 and 5 in the morning. He'd just wild out.
And that's the bug thing. Like when we started working on the documentary, we were interviewing, all these like crazy known people, and realizing back then we were like giddy to have them, like wow, like Big L, like it's a big deal. But I mean, may he rest in peace. But when we interviewed Nas and Busta, like, and finding out that these people revered us in the same way, they were giddy to be on our show,
right?
So it was like bugged out.
I saw Nas said it was the most important show.
At the time, I mean, he says it. I'm not going to say that.
He said it.
Yeah, he
Nas
said it.
Yes.
But yeah, if you want to quote him, sure. Like, I mean, he wrote his album Illmatic while listening to our show, which is
wow.
We didn't know that
insane.
until we interviewed him.
Yeah,
that was like.
Yeah.
What did you think about the change of hip hop? Because, like you said, rappers used to come up there; they had to be nice, and then it seemed the game has transformed a lot. I'm sure you've seen it where rappers don't have to be nice anymore. They just have to be, I guess,
Popular.
Popular.
People don't even want to freestyle anymore.
And stylistic. I saw a guy wearing a shearling with no shirt on, and his whole chest was tattooed.
That was Envy.
That
Definitely wasn't in
Yeah, I like this.
That was,
Not yet, anyway. Not yet.
that was a lovely touch.
So what do you think about the game transforming and it's less about the lyrics now?
Well, I think there's still a lot of artists out there that really care about the texture of hip hop culture.
That's true.
The texture, yeah.
Corduroy versus flannel.
No shirt versus shirt. Yeah, I mean, so props to them for upholding, the characteristics that we feel are what make up the best of what hip hop is.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, the door's been wide open, and you ask a 16-year-old what hip hop is, they might have a very different definition for that than someone who's 35 or 53.
Right.
So, and it's it means something to, so long as it means something to each person, then that's a beautiful thing. If people have an opportunity to express themselves, people have an opportunity to make money, using a craft that they feel passionate about, then that's a beautiful thing.
Well, so much positivity.
Yeah, because usually
incredible.
when we get asked that question, we come out as the grumpy old men.
Right.
Like,
I don't listen to trap music. I saw that.
It's like, who is this guy sitting next to me? You look like Bobbito, but Bobbito's not coming out of
What would he usually say?
It's trash.
Oh, yeah.
The new generation is garbage.
Yeah,
Don't be talking about nothing.
When we were touring our film, we screened it in over 60 cities. We'd get that question
more
a lot.
than that.
And after like 5 or 6 times, we were like, look, we're gonna do a Q&A now, and these are the ground rules. The first rule is don't ask us about hip hop today. But really, because
Damn it, Envy.
we don't want to be like the middle-aged
man.
grumpy
Right.
guys. Like I get it. Like when you're 15, 20, you have your experiences. Like you're coming up, and like your brain is still forming, and like the music that that's what you love.
Our parents know
and
what we listened to was trash.
Yeah, our parents hated that. Like my dad hated Wu-Tang. He hated the fact I used to listen to so much Wu-Tang.
Right,
I remember when that album came out with all the skits on it.
He wasn't hip-hop at all. He was a James Brown fan. He would say
Yeah.
James Brown was the first rapper. That's what he would say.
Yeah.
Who's somebody that the first moment you met them, heard them, you were like, this person is about to be a star, that left like the biggest impression, you would say?
I mean, it's obvious. The obvious one is Nas.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot, but I mean, the
What about Biggie?
The odd thing is that we had, in 8 years, we probably had 300 unsigned artists come through the show, and some of them were phenomenal, and never even got signed, or some of them got signed and never put out a record, or
Right.
put out a record and never, went double cardboard. So it's tough. It's really tough, and I think that's why our show started being special for people, because once they saw that Nas, Biggie, DMX was selling records, by 95, our radio show was like that was like everybody was taping, because you couldn't miss it. Because if you did, you'd be like, oh, you don't know if this kid rhyming in 95 is going to be the next,
But also,
Okay.
I mean, in the context of our show, it didn't really matter. I mean, there are plenty of artists that blew up and they never came back, and that was fine, because there was always a new generation right behind them. And our show was really, it was a meritocracy. We really wanted to wake up on Friday with like a dope mixtape. That was like, that was the goal. It was about the music.
You also got to remember, Angela, that think of it in a historical context. Like, no one had sold 10 million records, right? No one had sold, thinking about Biggie, right? He's first. Jay sold 75 plus million at the, Eminem sold 150. That was unheard of. Like back then, like a big deal was to 30 days later, the LP went gold. So what you saying, that was like a big deal. So when we think about blow up in today's context, is completely different to that context. I say Jay, when he first came up, he was very cocky, but I think he had his confidence from other games that he was involved in.
Yeah, money. Came into the game 100 grand strong.
I mean, he was nasty on the mic too, but I mean, he had a 12-inch with no album deal, so it was kind of like, wow, this dude really feels like he's the best.
I thought that was going
ever.
somewhere else.
But then he became that. He like manifested his own confidence into a lot of record sales. So
What was the moment that caused the show to really get notoriety and like earn y'all reputation? Because I think about the Breakfast Club. Our moment was when Ray J Wild out on Fabulous. Like, what was that moment that made the city like talk and really start messing with the Scratch and Bobbito show?
I think it was just really gradual, just consistent week to week.
Right.
Yeah, I think back to our first month, right? Like literally, we started October 25th, 1990, right? And within like a month, our first audience was the incarcerated population of the quadruple state area, right? We had Delaware, we had Jersey, Connecticut, New York. Every once in a while, on a windy night, we get Philadelphia too, right? So all the inmates would write letters, and we would read the letters on air, and they would evangelize, like, to their people back home, like, yo, you got to tune in Thursday night. So that's really how we started feeling the, oh, snap. And then, within the first 2 months, we had Busta Rhymes, we had Jamalski, we had Curious, we had MC Search, we had Two Kings in a Cypher, who was that was the original group of D-Dot. He was Amon Ra back then. And yeah, it's just within 2 months, it was like we were the new kids on the block,
Were you still at Def Jam during this time?
Yeah.
Yep, I worked at Def Jam,
And so were you bringing artists in, like, I heard somebody dope that we need to sign?
Yep, there's a lot of stories like that.
How many times you got jerked? How many stars you bought through that building and didn't get no credit for?
Nah, I mean, listen, I was A&R rep at Def Jam at the same time while I was on the radio. So
that's perfect, really.
Yeah, it was kind of but like Russell and Leo, their ears in those days, I mean, when I started working there, I had already known that they had passed on special ed. I'd known about like 50 people that they had passed on, so I kind of knew what Def Jam wanted. So I was given the Nas and Akinelli demo. Nas's demo I thought was stellar, but I knew that Russell was going to sign it. I just knew that he was going to pass on it.
Why? Why do you know that?
Just he was too lyrical. And Russell was, I mean, I tried to get Organized Confusion signed to Def Jam when they were called Simply Too Positive. That's Pharoah Monch's original group, and Russell passed on that. He had passed on something else.
And that demo was...
Yeah, that demo was...
That's wild, though, because LL was lyrical, Slick Rick was lyrical, Chuck D was lyrical.
For sure. But, each of them, if you think about their attitude, and they had like...
Nas was too laid back.
Not to use the word swag, but swag.
I mean, they like Public Enemy was very conceptual, from jump, right? LL was very conceptual and kind of like the
ladies
the
man,
the balance to Run DMC.
Commercial,
like he was like the solo companion to Run DMC as a group. Slick Rick was like the storyteller, jewelry. And Nas had all that, but just off of a demo, Russell couldn't see that. So I didn't even play Nas's demo for Russell. I gave him Akinelli's demo because Akinelli had the punchlines and he was talking all the smack and whatever. But Russell passed on that too. And then years later, Nas was in an interview saying, "Yeah, Bobbito fronted at me on Def Jam." I was like, I had to tell him, like, "Yo, B, like, for real, like I was saving your time. I didn't want you to waste your energy."
You didn't even give him a shot though. Like, you know what? Let me let these guys hear this.
Well, you know what? I didn't bring it to Russell. Someone else did shortly after, and he wound up. I was right. He passed on it anyway. So I was, I saved his energy.
Now when you got
that made me hate Russell. I love Russell, but that's like I don't know if we can ever trust anything Russell ever says ever again. Like,
LLJ and all that. Now when you guys went to terrestrial radio, when y'all went to that was terrestrial, but when y'all went to Hot 97, did that help or did that hurt because you couldn't be as loose or could you?
It was because that was uncensored. When you guys were doing 89.9, you could play like the album uncensored versions.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean it was we didn't last that long at Hot. I think when we were up there, that was when I think there were really a lot of like rapid changes happening. Mainstream had really embraced hip hop and when we started, we were one of those places that hip hop heads had to go really seek out late at night, like down the dial. By 96, 97, you've got this like this industrial renaissance in New York City where
that's so well.
Where
can you remember that for other interviews we do? That's dope.
So the it took a little bit more effort, I think, to distinguish what we were doing from what was happening in the daytime and what was happening on other shows. It became harder for me to get my hands on music first because there's more competition between shows and more powerful DJs were like, nah, you got to give me the exclusive. But at the same time, we were able to distinguish ourselves from everything else that was going on. A lot of our listeners from 89.9 were upset that we were making that jump because, we were kind of like their secret. But I feel
like a lot of the terrestrial shows on Hot 97 stole your formula, though. Like as far as the freestyles and playing stuff from the B-sides, like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we invented that wheel. I think we did a really good job at infusing, our weekly program with like a lot of freedom and a lot of leeway, letting artists really kind of do what they felt like doing, whether it was just hanging out or rhyming for 10 minutes. But at the end of the day, I think we proved to our fans that, there is a place on a mainstream station like that where we can still do what we're doing, championing, maybe, less well-known artists, new artists, but on a really big platform. And really the ethos ended up being the same.
What about West Coast artists? Did a lot of West Coast artists, because it was such a New York thing, so did people come from like the West Coast a lot and do the show, or was it mainly a East Coast?
Nah, Dr. Dre was a guest on our show. King T.
Souls of Mischief.
Yeah, the whole Hieroglyphics crew, Freestyle Fellowship for LA. Exhibit was huge on our show.
It's not a West Coast, it's a regional record. I was playing Ghetto Boys for, like 6 months before Mind Playing Tricks on Me popped in New York.
Wow. Yeah. That's true. That's true math. Who else? Tash from the Alcoholics came up. Tash is actually the person. Tash and Mike and I came up, and they brought up another unsigned artist who I should mention with the rest, Talib Kweli. That was in '95. And Talib Kweli, years later, Reflection Eternal, Black Star, Solo. And now you see what he's doing politically. His first time he was ever heard was on our show.
So it's interesting that you guys are just now putting out a debut album.
30 years later.
With all this history and all these artists that you knew, and with your connections with Def Jam and everything, that now you guys have decided, okay, let's drop this album.
It is interesting, and perhaps we should have thought about being producers, in the 90s and work with all these unsigned artists and, rode the wave and, to their success.
Nobody tried to sign y'all back then?
Yeah, actually, I reminded Bob.
I totally
just this week,
did not remember this.
We had a deal with Columbia. Faith Newman was trying
you got to show me the agreement. I don't remember that
Stretch
at
and
all.
Bob kind of concept album, which would have been like with Nas and Capone and Noriega would have been on that record. There is a deal memo. I don't really remember this happening, but I saw the deal memo and all these artists were on at CNN, Curious, Big L.
What year was that? Do you remember?
What's that?
What year was that? Do you remember?
That probably would have been 95.
And what happened?
I don't know.
You
just saw it and didn't follow
I don't know
up?
what happened.
So, sorry.
No,
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
You good?
Yeah.
Because it's your show.
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
So anyway, in process of doing this film, Stretch and Bobbito Radio That Changed Lives, we were just kicking it one day, we creatives, right? We always trying to push the envelope, figure out new challenges, how to reinvent ourselves, moving forward. We don't want to always rest on the laurels of the 1990s, for the iconic show that we did. And he was like, yo, we should do a band together. Yo, that's dope. Meanwhile, I'm going to backtrack. I have been working with Eddie Palmieri. He's a 10-time Grammy Award winner, National Endowment of the Arts, jazz master, Latin music legend. Been recording since the 1950s. Like, we peoples at this point. He did original score music for my first film, Doing It in the Park, Pick Up Basketball, NYC, which I directed, co-produced, wrote, music supervised. He did original score music for my last film, Rock Rubber 45s. So in process with this rapport that I had with him and his label, Uprising Music, they were like, yo, you should produce an album. And I was like, well, actually, I would love to, but I'll be over my head. Can I do it with Stretch? Turned out that Zolo Torres, who was the label head, when he was at Yale University, his mom used to stay up to tape our radio show and mail it to him in school.
Wow.
So he was like stretching Bobbito, making an album, like done. So we got signed literally like that week, and you know, what was it, like next week we were like figuring out musicians to fill out the band. You know, within 3 months, figured out what songs we were gonna reinterpret, and you know, a year later we got an album titled No Requests. It's titled that because if people know us from the 90s, they would expect a rap album with incredible MCs and Pete Rock and Primo and all the, you know, large pro. But we put together like a band, and our album scopes Latin music, Afrobeat, jazz, funk, soul, rock. You know, we have
Rock.
I mean, semi.
Yeah,
you know,
I know, but just
maybe not.
sounds fun.
Yeah, maybe not rock. All right. You know, we do have one joint on it called Anna from Woolside, aka Beat Sweet. That Stretch, you want to talk about that one? That's like our homage to the '90s.
Yeah, I mean, this record is everything, but a rap record. But we also knew that if people were going to pick up or stream a Stretch and Bob record, you know, we wanted to give them something that would let them know, like, oh, these are the same guys that you know from before. So the opening, Anna from Woodside, is a tribute medley.
Yeah.
It's like kind of a
homage.
medley of interpretation of like 5 iconic '90s
joints,
bangers, but done in a different way with a live band.
Well, Scratch, as a white man, you never had to coach or vote your label. How did you avoid that?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, when Bob and I got on the radio in '90, you know, the first few weeks I think we were trying to do, our show was trying to be like that typical radio show. Like, we'd announce the songs and, you know, playlists, and make sure we had station breaks and, you know, that kind of formal formula. And within weeks we realized that wasn't us. We just kind of threw that out the window and just really realized that the more we were ourselves, the more we resonated with our audience. And you know, for me, you know, one of the reasons why I asked Bob to join me on the radio, in addition to the fact that we really were genuinely great friends really quickly and made each other laugh all the time, was because I didn't want to be that white guy in New York City talking during a hip-hop show. I just felt like it just wasn't the right touch. But, you know, within a short amount of time, I, you know, talked a lot, and just really was myself. And I think musically, I more than kind of proved my merit over time. I feel like I've always had really good taste in music, and I think people realized that I really cared about you know, as silly as our show was, we were always dead serious about the music and about the culture. And I think that was sort of what, you know, got people to accept me.
I'm sure people were shocked when they saw you. They're like, "Oh shit, you white?"
Yeah, I never. Yeah, I mean, even, you know, we didn't have social media, and you know, our picture was in the Source a few times, but you really, you know, unless you were like in New York City in clubs and whatnot, you might not know what I looked like. And even in the mid '90s, I remember guys coming up and being like, looking at me like totally confused. In the mid '90s, I'm thinking like the cat is out the bag. Like, this is not a secret.
No, I didn't know that you were
looking
white
at me
guy
like,
first.
huh? I'm like, what? I thought you were like, how
I thought you meant now.
No,
how could you
no,
say
no.
I'm not white? Listen to me.
Nah, but back then I did not. Back then I didn't know. I mean,
You
because-
listened to our show back then?
a little bit,
Yeah, cool.
but I didn't know you were white. I had no clue until I think I met you one time. Maybe I went to a party or a club,
Right.
and it was like Stretch is DJing, and I'm like, that's not Stretch, and it was like, yes,
that's the sound tech.
but that's not. But I didn't know at first either.
Was there any backlash or criticism?
Nah, never.
Oh,
None.
I think also
Maybe behind my back. Not that I'm aware of. Yeah.
And I think getting started so early too is kind of like you were already pretty much ingrained into it, and people knew who you were personality wise before they knew that you were white. You know, I think like for me, when I started doing radio, it wasn't a lot of social media was pretty new too, and my name is Angela Yee. So I remember there were blogs like, who is this Asian person who thinks that she can be in hip hop and steal our culture. And it was like real people posting that. And then people would be like, she's black, she's half black and half Asian. And it is a thing where people really have an issue if they don't feel like you're a part of the culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Bob and I had made some like really like flagrant commercial moves and were exploiting artists that we came into contact with, I think maybe that would have been a different conversation.
Right.
But we've made a really good living doing what we've been doing for X amount of years. But it's never been about the money.
Right.
And the money is kind of come secondary to us just being really into what we're doing and enjoying it and finding kind of purpose in our day to day and the projects we do. So.
It's also rare to see people be together for 30 years and not really fall out with each other.
Nah, we did.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So
Y'all had a falling out?
Yes.
What was it over?
Huh?
What was it over?
Well,
Bongos.
Yeah.
It was over percussion.
I mean, if you watch the film Stretch and Bobbito, the radio that changed lives. I mean, when I wrote the narrative, like I didn't want it to be like we helped out all these artists, and they went, that would have been easy. So we parted ways in '98, and we stopped doing a radio show together. I mean, we were always, there was no like beef or nothing like that. But we took a little while to let the steam die down, and then within like a year, 2 years, we was like, okay, we cool again, and we've been boys all this time. My son hangs out with Stretch, and what I mean, like he's Uncle Stretch, so it's family. I know his parents, he knows my parents, so we're blessed in that way that people might, especially in hip hop, like they might butt heads and then it just wind up just being like, all right, that's it, but we never had no ego about it.
right.
And it wasn't like
Business-wise,
it
it's
wasn't
hard.
like I violated him.
Nobody
and he
wronged
violated-
anybody.
Right.
We just
exactly.
had differences that I think we weren't at the time really able to work through and express. I feel like now I look back at the tension that we're talking about, and now with the mind I have now, is like, oh, that would have been such an easy thing to navigate.
Right.
We could have worked that out in 20 minutes. Whereas back then it was like, I don't know how to deal with this.
Right.
Serious, just, and passive aggressive, not talking, being in the same room, not greeting each other.
But I mean, we
Yada,
parted
yada.
ways, and quite honestly, like our radio show probably would have ended around that era anyway. I don't see. We wouldn't have done the radio. We wouldn't still be on the radio now on WKCR 89.9 FM.
Oh, I mean, not on that station, but I mean, maybe it could have evolved into something else, like podcast.
I mean, we
They have
did
a
a
podcast.
podcast. We had a
Yeah.
podcast for NPR.
NPR, yeah.
Yeah, What's Good with Stretch and Bobbito. We have a new podcast called The Actual Stretch and Bobbito Show. That's on a new platform that we can't share just yet, but it's right around the corner where we'll have new episodes and all that stuff. So,
How do y'all feel about the longevity and sustainability of radio and podcast now? Hey, you biting your tongue again, Bobbito.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now with podcasts, it's like the equivalent time to when everyone had a blog, right? And that eventually settled. I think the podcast game is crazy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think,
Everybody
Very
has a podcast.
oversaturated.
I think iTunes has over like 550,000
Sheesh.
podcasts.
That's crazy.
Like different.
Spotify
That
has
many
a 500,000.
shows. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I think it's got a. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's a pretty diluted listenership.
Right.
But I think people are. I think people listen. People check the radio.
Yeah.
They really do, right?
You guys don't listen to the radio though.
yeah, that's why I bite my.
I know.
I don't pay much attention to radio or whatnot.
I don't blame you.
podcasts.
You don't believe
I don't blame him.
It's only when you work, man.
I don't blame him.
Well, you guys have the
I get it.
you guys have the new album out now.
That's
no
right.
requests.
Yeah.
Bomb. I like that because I like I like the nostalgic feel, but the flip that you get with these songs.
No doubt.
Because it's songs that you've heard, but it's a different take on it, and it's a very brave thing to do because a lot of these are songs that are classics, and it's hard to touch a classic.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
No doubt.
A show like y'all's with the B-sides from the artists and the live freestyles, the DJ scratch sessions. You think that could work in this climate?
I mean, I think it does, right? I'm not an expert on what the platforms are, but I mean, even look at can we talk about people on other stations?
Yeah.
Okay, go right ahead.
I mean, like Flex has
with the freestyle joint.
Yeah, he's got
Ciroc Lounge,
artists freestyling and DJs doing routines, which to me is interesting because that type of exposure for that aspect of the culture never happened on mainstream radio before.
Sway does
him to do that.
Sway does that
it's
as
still
well.
not really on mainstream radio though, because a lot of it's taped and you have to.
Of course,
you have to download,
of course. But there's a mainstream. But Flex is a
effect,
mainstream
Because as a
DJ.
kid, I would be able to hear that. I can go in my car, listen to Flex, cut, scratch, bring it back, hear rappers rap, and mess up, curse, and have to start over. You would hear that.
And those guys are older. Like, I expect them to do that because that's what they know. I'm talking about could a new generation do that?
Yeah, I mean, we're not the ones to ask,
Right.
but yeah, good question.
So, pivoting back to your point, like, we're always trying to reinterpret the culture, right? And we did attack some iconic songs on our album.
The Mexican.
And songs that don't need to be redone, but we infused it with Latin music, we infused it with samba, we infused it with Afrobeat, we infused it with other rhythms, so that they're more our stamp.
Right.
Like we don't want to be a cover band. That's whack. I mean, that's whack. Some people do that very well.
Shout out to the cover bands.
Nah, I'm just saying, like, me and Stretch, we're progressive minds. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it sounds good. I enjoyed it. It's a
appreciate
nice,
that.
Yeah.
Word.
It's very enjoyable because I like the familiarity of it, but then I like the, like you said, reimagining of it. And you do have a show.
We have a show at the Gramercy Theater. It's our album release concert / after party. Thursday night, January 23rd. The doors open at 7. Showtime is at 8 o'clock. Me, Stretch, and Rich Medina, who's also featured on the album, will be DJing the after party. The list of people who are coming is bananas already, and tickets are still available. Well, when this airs, maybe they won't. I don't know.
Hopefully, right?
Would y'all ever write a book? Because I know that y'all got stories. Jay-Z, Nas, Biggie, Big Pun. Like I know
Wu-Tang.
you got
Dr.
stories that you probably can't share anywhere but in a book.
Yeah, we came very close to doing a book deal with Rizzoli, which would have sort of coincided with the documentary. It didn't happen, and we've both published books, and it's
a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
And
so doing it as a companion piece for the film would have been too much. Doing it now that we got an album, we're gonna start touring. We got press but it'll happen
it might
at some point.
Yeah,
you
guys
we'll get
got
to
this.
it. Yeah, we'll get to it. Just like the album we talked about in 2015, and now it's 2020 and it's coming out. So we have spoken these things into the universe. They will happen at some point when it's meant to.
When are you going to be a Brooklyn Nets fan instead of a Knicks fan?
I mean, I love the Brooklyn Nets. I live in Brooklyn. I don't really consider myself a fan of anybody though, or any team. I'm a ball player.
Okay, so you don't really. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the worst team wins or gets drafted, or it doesn't affect my day whatsoever. Like I'd rather play than spectate. That's not to take away from all the great players that are up there. I'm about to play today with Jose Calderon, Baron Davis, and Rod Strickland for something related with the NBPA, the National Basketball Players Association. So I got much respect for the NBA. They've supported me in multiple ways over the years. I was an announcer for the New York Knicks in 2006, doing halftime reports. The NBPA sponsored my tournament, Full Court 21, last summer. But yeah, I don't lose any sleep if the Knicks go 23 and whatever.
Well, you kind of get numb to it, right?
Yeah, you kind of get numb.
You kind of get numb to
You'll
it,
be
right?
too
No, it's not even numb. It's just like it's cool. Like I love basketball. You know what I'm saying? Like I could go to St. John's, in Crown Heights and watch like a little kid being mentored by his uncle and find great joy in just watching the kid dribble on his foot. I go to Kingston Park, St. Andrews. They got a full court biddy rim, so 2 7-foot rims on both sides. I see the junior high school kids trying to flush it on each other.
Good. We'll go to some WNBA games.
WNBA is dope.
Yes, I agree.
WNBA is dope, and the WNBA gets slept on a lot because the skill level is incredible, but also the sneaker game in the WNBA is bananas, yo. You see what they wear?
Yeah.
Yeah, they coming out with customized joints, and I want to see more women get signature shoes. It's happening slowly.
Have you maintained any relationships with any of the stars that y'all used to push back in the day?
To a degree. I mean, there's certainly a contingency of maybe.
What's the last time
maybe
you
they're
spoke
not
to Jay? What's the
stars.
last time you spoke to Jay or Nas?
In this documentary.
Yeah, I think when we sat with them.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen Nas since '93 when he was up on our show. So when we interviewed him in 2015 for the film, it was like a big hug because his appreciation for us was ridiculous. And it was nice to see. Jay I hadn't seen since '95. The Big L Jay-Z freestyle was the last time oh, no, actually, he came to the show twice. He came to the show after that.
I spent more time in clubs.
Right, so you've seen a lot of these.
And they all signed off, so.
But that's what I'm saying. That's a beautiful thing, right? Like they may not have kept in touch, but when you really needed them,
they came through.
They was
no
there.
doubt. No, we hit up Fat Joe, and like literally, he wasn't even I think he was in Florida. He was like, "Yo, you want me for the interview? I'm there." The next day, he
dope.
was.
Yeah,
That's Joey
there,
Craig.
like,
I remember I was at a club in the West Village in the mid 2000s. I forget the name of it. It's a downstairs joint. And DMX randomly was there, and he was sitting in this back room by himself with security blocking the door. And I went up to security and was like, "Yo, I'm gonna talk to D." They were like, "No, chill." So I got his attention. I don't think he even recognized me when I was like, "Yo, can I talk to you?" Anyway, I got in, and
That's
he
the third
saw
time
me.
you got curved in this interview.
Yo, this is like 2005. I hadn't seen him since '90. His first time on the radio. He saw me when he figured out who I was. Yo, his eyes lit up. He was like, "Yo!"
So dope.
And just like gave me the crazy hug. And it's I think for these artists, when they see us, in a way, it takes them back to a time in their life when they didn't know what was going to happen, but they loved what they were doing within the culture.
And it turned out well.
It was an innocent time, and I know, I think, was it Redman? You said he was shooting something, or was it Meth?
Yeah, Method Man. Method Man was shooting some film. I lived in Harlem at the time, and he was in front of the old tire shop with a Kangol on, and like, you know what I mean, like the real like 1980. I forget what movie.
Belly.
It was.
That sound like
Nah, it
Belly.
wasn't Belly.
It was
later. It was later. Anyway,
That show with Mac Wilds probably, where he played his dad. I forget.
Yeah, but anyway, he like stopped set. Like he saw me. He was like, "Yo, that's my man, Bobbito, yo." Gave me a hug. I mean, he just lost his mind. It was nice. We
were in Dubai for Soul DXB.
Oh, no doubt.
Wu-Tang headline.
25,000 people.
And we're in like you move, but we're like right in front of the stage in the pit, like kind of where I was when I tried to shake your hand at the Apollo. And RZA in the middle of the show stops, and he just was like, just spontaneously like gave me, Bob, and Clark Kent, who was standing next to me, just like the biggest like
he was like, yo, if it wasn't for these guys,
ever.
like
it was
we wouldn't happen. So
but he like described it like step by step.
Yeah.
He was like, no one would play us. They played us. Then these guys played us. Next thing you know, the whole world is playing us. It was sweet.
That's dope, man.
Nice.
Well, give me all your information so people can stay in touch with you.
We are at Stretch and Bobbito on Instagram. I'm Cool Bob Love with a K on Instagram.
And I'm Stretch Armstrong on Instagram.
And the website is a long one, so we'll just keep it simple, stretchandbobbito.com. You can find information about our film, about our album, which is available now on all digital platforms. We're also releasing it as a 7-inch box set on vinyl.
Nice.
Your listeners know what 7-inch box set be?
They're going to Google it.
Word. All right, cool. We're doing CDs.
They don't
know what that is.
We're doing cassettes.
They definitely don't know cassettes.
And we're doing a 12-inch album as well. We got merchandise. We got plenty more shows coming up too. But Thursday at the Gramercy Theater is the album release concert / after party. And we smashed the Kennedy Center in D.C. That's our nation's official cultural center. That was our first show ever. And we had Grammy Award nominee Maimouna Youssef on stage with us, aka Mumu Fresh. You may know her. She's sang with the Roots in Common. She's solo now. She's down with us. Mireya Ramos, Latin Grammy Award winner, and just recently a Grammy Award nominee. She sings on 2 songs, plays violin. So we got a crazy crew on stage with us, and yeah.
All right.
Appreciate the time.
We
Thank
appreciate
you,
you guys
Stretch
for joining us.
Word up.
Stretch and Bobbito. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.